Hello, family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name is Betty, and today I'm joined by Dani. And Dani is an afterlife researcher. He's a university professor on near-death experiences, and he's our IANDS Italy group leader, and he is our new podcast host. So the reason for this episode is that we're kind of doing a little pass the torch situation right now. So IANDS is rebranding, and the Explore the Extraordinary podcast will be leaving our, I don't know what the word I want to use is. It's going to be leaving our atmosphere. And we're going to be calling in this new podcast that Dani's going to be the host of. It's going to be called Afterlife Revealed. So Dani, thank you so much for your willingness to come on and have a conversation today.
Thank you, Betty.
So could you do me a favor and maybe tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So where do we start? So I have 2 degrees in computing, a master in death studies. I worked as a business analyst in the City of London, had a number of businesses, the main one being a bicycle brand. So if you type my surname on Google and go to images, you find a lot of bikes, which is what kept me busy for almost 10 years. And 7 years ago, I started to investigate all scientific approaches that in some ways are trying to of the afterlife. So as you mentioned, these days I'm a lecturer on NDEs at the University of Padua and team leader of IANDS Italy, and I host the Afterlife Revealed podcast. That's kind of the very summarized version of what I've been up to now.
Thank you so much for sharing. So let me ask you, what got you into the whole realm of near-death experiences? How did this interest get piqued for you?
That's the question I ask also my guests, and my answer is going to be a very common one. It starts usually with a curiosity. I've been asking my local priest a lot of questions. He really knew me for the guy that was asking all the questions. And I have to be honest, I never found them very satisfactory. So, I studied the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads a little bit. And so the curiosity was there, but I was always left with that feeling, but how, how do we prove these things? Where do you get all these amazing ideas from? And only recently I came across the field of near-death studies with NDEs. And this is where I would say for the first time, everything started to come full circle. It seemed to me that there's many ways that we can attempt to, answer the riddle of the afterlife. But in my opinion, NDEs still remain perhaps the most accurate map that we are offered in this era. And it feels very reassuring, the fact that if you dig deep enough, you may find that what NDEers come back with, they're the same values and insight that most religions have been trying to transmit over the millennia. So that's why over the last few years, when I really started to dig deep into this exciting field, I started to also make sense about a lot of the subjects that I revisited as I was younger without, as I said, making much sense of it. So it's a slow process, and I guess I have an advantage, which is I've not had a near-death experience. So I think I say this because I guess I want to prove that one does not need to die to, let's say, revisit, their worldview in a radical way. And I feel that it may take perhaps a little longer, but it's certainly safer, than dying and being resuscitated. So I know we had this conversation already. I feel that since the 70s, we've been very privileged with the fact that the defibrillator and CPR really changed everything. So for the first time in history, we had many people coming back from the dead, and as you know, 15-20% of them coming back with a memory of a near-death experience. So these are really exciting times that I feel finally science is able to come to terms with, as I mentioned, some of the insights that only religions were able to transmit up to now. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but this is my process in a nutshell, and I'm still exploring it. Obviously it's an ongoing process, but I have to say the way that I see my mortality and the one of of the people around me is very different compared to what I used to, feel about life 10 years ago.
Thank you so much for sharing. And, I love that you're sharing about the fact that just that sentence, you don't have to have a near-death experience. And I love that so much. And I also love the fact that as we shift into this new branding, that it's going to be more research-based, more academic, which is what IANDS' original mission has always been, is to provide people with research around near-death experiences. And so we're getting it straight from the source. We have a professor on this that's coming in to guide conversations with experiencers, with non-experiencers, and just create this space for us to expose people to this information. It's incredible. So tell me about what your process is, like with interviewing people. You've already had your own podcast for a while, and it's kind of getting shifted over into the IANDS brand. So tell me like some of your favorite things about being a podcast host and some of the things that you weren't expecting.
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I probably should have come more prepared for this. I think it's interesting because, and you've done it long enough yourself, I'm sure you've encountered this as well, that there comes a time where you start to see the similarities, that you start to realize that people are looking at the same thing just from a different angle. And I find that very reassuring, the fact that these people don't know each other, they come from different cultural upbringings, with different ages, creeds, and yet they're all talking about the same thing. So this is what really excites me, and I like to do this podcast because you get to ask the delicate questions. You get to ask the questions that you probably wouldn't ask in a bar or with someone that you just met. You get to ask. I don't know if this is also the resistance that you have faced occasionally, but people these days still don't want to talk about death. There's the work with Ernest Becker with the denial of death or terror management theory, and they're all trying to demonstrate that we have this innate fear of death that we tend to set aside into our subconscious because we just feel we're too busy to live this life. And the more I study death, the more I realize that it's actually learning about life. So that we should have these conversations because we have so much to gain from it, to try and gain a more complete perspective of this life. You have to make the uncomfortable questions. And NDEers or researchers, of course, they have either through direct experience or through a core understanding of the subject, they understood that. So they committed to try and committed to the truth, so to speak. And that's something that I still encounter with some of my friends, with some people that, they still don't want to talk about it. They're still a little scared, or occasionally I get the statement, "Oh, well, I'm too busy living a life. Why would I worry about something that hasn't arrived yet?" And really it's because of that, because you're going to have a very different human experience if you're going to just maintain your perspective within the experience itself, whereas if you extend the reach, then you can actually make a lot more sense of this experience itself and live a much fuller life. So we're slowly getting there. I still feel we are the early adopters, and IANDS, in my opinion, is perhaps the best positioned association in the world that will help society as a whole to come to terms with the notion of an afterlife. But as I said, I think it's an exciting time to be alive, and I'm so grateful that we get to experience that, because as I mentioned, before the 70s, people didn't really have any tools really to be able to have these conversations, whereas now I think we're really getting there, and so exciting times ahead.
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to give you some space to ask me some questions.
Brilliant. Well, okay, there you go. So this is kind of a two-way interview, which I think it's only fair. So this is your last Explode Extraordinary podcast. I think some people will want to know, how do you feel about that?
I feel so excited. I'm so grateful. how all the synchronicities and spirit led us to each other, so that I knew that this was the right person to hand it off to. I am a huge believer in rotation of service. I don't think that any one person should be having any one job, especially when it comes to a community, for too long. There's different voices that need to be heard. There's different perspectives, and there's just all of these things that it can't continue if it's just one person. I'm so grateful that I was able to develop my voice by having this space to hold and just connecting with all these experiencers and all of these super knowledgeable people and just holding space with them. Like, nothing has brought me more joy on this journey than holding space with experiencers. And so I feel really great about it. I think that I'm definitely, I'm still going to be involved with IANDS. Dani and I will both be at the IANDS conference, the 2025 IANDS conference in Chicago this year. And my involvement is just going to be in a little bit of a different way. But I love this organization. It has given me a foundation. It has given me a voice. It has given me courage and bravery and taught me how to be part of the back end of an organization, which isn't all like spiritual fairy dust and stuff, like there's real people on the back end of things, and dealing with just, like the amazing people here that all have the same mission in mind. And that's just to, in one way or another, and this is not like IANDS mission verbatim, but just to uplift consciousness, to uplift humanity through this information.
Yeah, that's great. So 150 episodes in the last couple of years, a bit more than that. So I wonder, is there anything that you've learned that you didn't know already from your near-death experience that you'd like to share with the community?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, here's the one thing that I've learned is that everybody is experiencing a different reality, and that's okay. So I think when I first started the podcast, when somebody would come on and they would say something that wasn't aligned with my beliefs, I was like, this person's crazy. This person's out of their mind. And then as time went on, and I heard so many different experiences, and guess what? They weren't all aligned with my beliefs. And I started to understand, like, oh, that's actually okay. Because there is no one size fits all when it comes to the human experience. So these are humans that I'm dealing with. Maybe there is just one spiritual truth, and all of us have little pieces of it, like maybe not the whole picture. But definitely there were things that I heard that they're just not in my scope of reality. Like I have certain beliefs around like darker experiences. And when I was exposed to more and more of them through interviewing people, instead of rejecting it, I just accepted it as that is that person's reality. They have that information for other people who resonate with this information. It's not for me. It's for the other people that they're supposed to touch as teachers.
Yeah, makes sense. That's great. I know that you just started a very demanding job. I was wondering if you're still going to be offering your transformation coach services.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. There's tons of ways to connect with me. We have sharing groups at IANDS Groups and Events, and the information's in the liner notes of this episode. It's isco.iands.org. And sometimes I pop into those sharing groups. They're just free for anybody in the community. And it's just a place for experiencers and non-experiencers to come together in community. I have my own little free community that meets on Tuesday nights on Zoom. And I work as a transformation coach. And so, I'm able to connect with people in that way as well. And I have space for that right now until I lose my mind from doing too much, which might happen.
Oh, no, I'm sure you'll do fine. Well, that's great, very well. It's not the last time we're going to be hearing from you, that's for sure. Do you have one final message that you love to leave us with?
Well, I just got overwhelmed with emotion. Okay, yeah, this is really happening, right? Maybe I didn't realize it until just this moment. I am just so grateful for this community. I really am. And again, I'm not dying and I'm not leaving IANDS, but I am so grateful for the fact that I was able to find my voice. And a big part of finding my own voice has been listening to other people's voices and holding space for them. And, cherry picking things that I really like out of other experiencers, how they tell their stories, how they how they flow together, how, you know, like how they've constructed really powerful shares. And I'm really grateful for that. And I think, you know, probably the only message that I would leave people with is that your thoughts create your reality. I say this every time somebody asks me this question, but your thoughts really do shape your reality. And I'm going to tell you how, because like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I made an Instagram live where I said, I'm going to have a podcast one day. And then 2 years later, IANDS approached me and they said, we want you to host a podcast for us. And I was like, no, it's not for me. That I don't want to. And I resisted this for a long time. And then eventually I remembered, like, oh no, this was one of my dreams, was to do this. And, you know, I transformed over the course of this too. Like the thumbnails I used to be in the thumbnail. Why? I'm not doing anything. I'm holding space. Why am I in the thumbnail? And then as time went on, it was like, oh no, this isn't about me. This is about other people. And I think that at first I did think that it was about me. And so that's a big message of transformation that's happened to me over the course of this experience, being the podcast host, is that I got out of my own way. I went out of my self-centered thinking and I came into service and spirit-centered thinking, and I just held space for experiencers in a really loving and genuine way. And so I'm so grateful for that. So if you have a thought, you want to host a podcast, you want to be a coach, you want to be an author, you want to be a business leader, write it down. I wrote this down and it happened. So manifestation is real. It really, really is.
Well, worked for me too, so yeah, I can attest to that.
Yes, this is so true. Yeah, Dani set intention with me, and then there it goes. It's all out. Amazing.
Yeah. No, Betty, I think you did a wonderful job with that, so I thank you on behalf of the whole of IANDS and beyond, because you will be missed, I'm sure. I can only try and do a job as good as you have. And yeah, wish you all the best. I'll be seeing you around anyways.
Of course. I want to ask, Dani, is there anything that our community can expect with you coming in and taking the lead? Is there anything that you want to tell us about what the podcast is going to look like?
Well, I like to, I try to keep these things very informal. I know you've been interviewed, so you know my style. I like to ask as many questions as we can. So we would like to make this new process also a bit more engaging. So if people do want to ask questions to NDEers, they can reach out to me, and I can maybe try and add those questions too. I think it's important that we're all here to learn, right? So I don't claim to be nowhere, more special than anyone else. So I think it's important that going through this process together. So I'm here to listen to people's feedbacks. I learned a lot from you as well, from your style of, as you say, holding space with respect and talking about, as I said, some rather uncomfortable questions sometimes, with respect. So yeah, we will see.
Amazing. I'm so excited for it. So then we'll close this, and this will be the last episode of the Explore the Extraordinary podcast, and look forward to seeing the Afterlife Revealed podcast on this channel. Dani, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to our community for allowing me to hold this space.
Thank you. All the best for now. Ta-ta.